Alright, and we are live with another Wilhelmius Van Diaper show. Got a bit of a new look going on, finding out some more things. We'll be getting to our topic momentarily. Alright. Let's see, we got Reformed Duchy. Hello, welcome to the show. Hey, we have one viewer, and it's you, and 0 likes. We all know that you didn't like the stream, so I'm going to shame you publicly. Welcome to the show. We got some more people joining up. Alright. This week, we're going to get to the idea of how to intellectually subjugate your friends and family. Now, this is very tough, because you can't really debate your friends and family into agreeing with you. And there's a reason. Yeah, you are a terrible person. How dare you not like? And there's many reasons for that, but when it comes to why does somebody agree with you, or why does someone convinced of a position, it's going to come down to a couple things, but the ones we're going to focus on today are 3 primary ones: authority, credibility, and sociability. So, and they're all interconnected, as in, if you have authority, you have credibility. If you have credibility, you have authority. They build up each other. Now, these are sort of independent of which social circles you're in, and we're going to get into these ideas. And so one of the ideas you have to first understand in order to know how to intellectually subjugate your... I'm not going to submit to Obama! Leave my stream if you're going to tell me that... No, I'm kidding. Don't leave. Alright, but one of the core ideas we're going to have to understand if you want to know how to intellectually subjugate your friends is we're going to have to understand P.F. Jung's idea, and this is a YouTuber, his idea of mimetic feudalism. And mimetic feudalism isn't really anything new, but it's definitely a new label. And the idea basically goes as such. You have a teacher. And in this case, yeah, go ahead and cry about Obama. In this case, the teacher... And we'll use Christianity as a test case, which all of us should be very familiar with, this being a Christian channel. Yes, we did go from 6 to 7 viewers. And I think saying that just got us a few more, so... Yep, 6, 7, truly. So with Christianity, you first have the words of Christ. And then you have, so let's say you have the scriptures. And then you have priests, and you have ancient theologians who go into the real big depths, and then they inspire priests, and then those priests inspire lay people, and then those lay people talk out to the regular culture. They're what's seen. And so what you notice is that you have this sort of feudal chain in that you have someone at the top who has a sort of authority, and their ideas get distributed down to everyone at the bottom. No, I'm never tired of my viewers. You guys are great. And so you have these slowly going up. You'll find where these ideas start, and then who follows them, and who follows them, and who follows them. And we can see similar things with the ideas of, let's say, Curtis Yarvin. Now, Curtis Yarvin himself is relatively unknown, but many of you maybe know Aristocratic Utensil, a fellow YouTuber. Maybe you know Oren McIntyre from Blaze TV. These two both are very influenced by the ideas of Curtis Yarvin, and then they in turn influence their viewers. And many of their viewers would never listen to Curtis to begin with, but they would certainly listen to Oren or Aristocratic Utensil. And you certainly know who Vice President J.D. Vance is, unless, I guess, you're from India or something, and you're just really not on the internet at all, except for to watch Wilhelmius Van Diaper's show, in which case, good on you. Good on you. And J.D. Vance is a politician who's highly influenced by the ideas of Curtis Yarvin. Now, unfortunately, he's not influenced enough. Curtis himself called him a normie. But we see, J.D. Vance as sort of this bishop, almost. And then he has priests or politicians beneath him who take these ideas out. And here's what you need to notice. That within these chains of, feudal ideas, we go from one person to who has a relatively small audience of influential people. So let's say everyone at Harvard. Then we go to all the people that they teach, and then we go to the pastors, and then we go to their entire congregation. And so, as you notice, Not everyone at the top is able to influence everyone at the bottom. And no one at the bottom is really able to substantially influence anyone at the top. Reform politics is making a comeback. We got Isaiah LaFone here. Yes, go check out Isaiah Presley LaFone's channel though. I'm excited. I'm hoping you do that video on Nick Fuentes eventually. That'll be fun. Um, anyway, where were we? So we see within these ideas that there are, different groups of credibility, and these ideas go down. They start from the top and they slowly move down to wider and wider audiences. And so, in order to intellectually subjugate your friends, you have to become the pseudo priest of your friendship. In that you have to be the one who listens to all the weird schizos on the internet, and you make their ideas palatable, and then your friend will listen to you. Because of course, if you're walking on the street and a random psycho comes up to you, no one is going to listen to him. But if your friend comes up to you and starts talking to you, you're going to listen to him. And so, one of the first steps to intellectually subjugating people is going to be actually being friends with them and understanding that ideas go, through populations in specific ways. They go from top to bottom. The influential, starting at, within Christianity, let's say the words of Christ, the scriptures. It's going to then go to the apostles. It's going to then go to the apostolic fathers. It's going to then go to bishops. It's then going to go to priests. And then it's going to go to your pastor. And then it's going to go to you. And these ideas have, different levels of credibility as well. So your pastor and his interpretation of scripture might be incredibly credible to you, and yet for some reason, if you're a weirdo, you might hate St. Augustine, and yet your pastor follows him almost lockstep. It's 9 o'clock now. What time zone are you all living in? J.D. Vance is a bishop of the Reformed Luxembourgish... Yeah, he is a bishop of the Reformed Luxembourgish Church. What are my thoughts on Nick Fuentes? Politically, he's okay, but he's a moral degenerate, which is his biggest issue. Yeah, he's highly degenerate. Not a very good person, but morally he is decent. So now that you understand that you can't just say to your friend in order to convince them of some idea, like you can't go to if you're, let's say, a Baptist, you can't go to your mom and go, "Mom, watch Jay Dyer. You'll be convinced to be Eastern Orthodox. Trust me. Trust me, Bob. Trust me." You cannot do that. She's not going to listen to Jay Dyer. She doesn't understand it. Jay Dyer has effectively become your intellectual bishop. You are beneath him and collecting his ideas, assuming you're an ortho bro. Which I hope none of you are. But it's likely you have been, or you're something very similar. I know most of my audience, probably half, is actually 16-year-old blarpers who can't go to the church they want to. And it's kind of sad, honestly. Okay, what time zone are you all in? How is it 4 o'clock? What are you in, Australia? That place does not exist. And anyway, you have to know that certain people will not listen to certain people. You very rarely can actually go up in the hierarchy to bring ideas. Your parents are not going to listen to you, but your friends might. If you are, in some ways, the intellectual head of the friendship. If you lead the friendship, they will listen to your ideas. And, I notice the same thing, too, if I talk to my younger cousin. He is very influenced by my political ideas. It really doesn't go the other way around. Not to say that I don't value his opinions, but more so to say that it just practically doesn't happen. We don't share ideas. Ideas almost always go down. They never go up in a hierarchy. And so that's another way you're going to have to be, in order to, intellectually subjugate your friends. You must become the superior member of the friendship. In some ways, hierarchical. And now, if you're a guy, this is easy, because all male friendships are in some way hierarchical. If you're a girl, this is going to be harder, because you're much more of equals, and female friendships usually branch out into a web. Women are pack creatures, whereas men operate in a hierarchy. So if you're a guy, you're going to have a much easier time influencing your friends and their intellectual ideas than a girl is, assuming you are at the top of your friendship and you are the leader. And this is another way. This is another prerequisite. Can I not speak? a prerequisite to intellectually subjugating your friends is going to be being the leader of your friendship. In some ways, leading what is going on. Anyway, we have any questions about how to intellectually subjugate people? I've thought a lot about this over the last couple days, and I should have wrote out my ideas, but we're just riffing now. We're just riffing. So I'll take any questions starting now. Yeah. And so once you understand the ideas, that ideas go down, they do not go up, and that there are different levels of credibility. So obviously your pastor is more credible to you than the psycho on the street. I'm indoctrinating my younger cousin. Your inner atheist is fuming. Yes, in fact, indoctrination is not bad. Indoctrination is just a way of teaching something that goes beyond, the rational faculties, and it manages to skip over it. Which in many ways is that's what we call parenting. Which is kind of why the state feels like a nanny state right now. It just feels like the government is our mom. Because it's just like, don't do that. Why? Well, because I told you to when you're 3 years old. Don't touch the hot stove, That's indoctrination. In its simplest form, which is very true. And it's simply a way to teach people. And it is essential at a certain point. People do not know enough to think for themselves. And then as you get older, you have to actually justify your ideas. But when your kid is 4, you don't have to justify to them why they shouldn't touch the stove. You just say, no, I'm your dad, don't touch the stove. But, when your kid is 17 and he's like, why can't I touch the stove? You better reason with him because he's intellectually, he's intellectually fit enough to actually understand that. Yeah, sister of mine. I will keep the stream up afterwards. Yes, you'll be able to see it. Yeah, and one of the actual principles that I kind of like about Jay Dyer is he often says, don't debate your family. Most ideas do not go out through debates. Debates are for the audience, not for the individuals debating. So you could debate your dad. Let's say your dad's a hyper-dispensationalist or something, and he wants to send $1 billion to Israel every single day. Something like that. You're not going to convince him by debating him. It just doesn't work. Debates do not convince the individuals involved. Almost never. Now, reasonable people will see reasonable evidence, and they'll understand, okay, I see your objection, but that doesn't come through debate. It comes through conversation. You cannot intellectually subjugate someone through a debate. It just doesn't work. Unless they are an incredibly weak debater, and they're also, to some degree, humble. Who's the king again? This is King Alfred the Great, king of the Anglo-Saxons. What a true Chad. Giga Chad, a real stud of men. That's a man's man right there. If you all have not read about King Alfred, it's a sight to behold. Yeah, and remember, you cannot debate your parents because they are above you hierarchically. You're not going to convince someone who changed your diapers by just pure logic. Because they know, logically speaking, that they made your brain. Like, if it's your mom, your brain's been inside of her. She's not gonna, she's not gonna be like, I'm gonna listen to my son when he's debating me on obscure theology topics. I guess it's time to change my opinions. That's not gonna happen. That's not how the world works. But you can lead by example. You can get them in contact, in many ways, with a credible priest of some type. Because as we know, ideas go first from the scriptures, then to bishops and theologians who dispute the minutiae, the very details, to the priests, and then to the lay people. And this is how ideas go. And if you have gone a little further up in the chain, you got a little more access to maybe some bishops, maybe some old theologians, and you're starting to change your ideas to be more in line with theirs, the only way you can convince somebody who's higher in a hierarchy than you is to find somebody higher than them, someone they respect who agrees with you. And that's really the only way. You're not going to be able to go to your mom and be like, Mom, you need to stop being a non-denominational evangelical because it's cringe and gay and not historical. It's like, you're not going to be able to do that because she's going to go, oh, look, my little dumb baby just disagreed with me. Oh, I remember changing his diaper, Nobody who's changed your diaper is going to be convinced at you debating them. It's a simple principle. The very simple principle of I changed your diaper. I changed your diaper is the number one way to win a debate. Anyone who can use I changed your diaper as an objection will never be convinced by anything that you say, ever, even if you're right. Because again, they know better than you because they changed your diaper. Did I decide to submit to Augsburg and become a Lutheran? No, I am at last still torn. I'm just sitting here. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, remember the principle of diaper. Not just Wilhelmius van Diaper, but regular diapers. If somebody's changed your diaper, you won't win in a debate. Yes, Luther was incredibly based, but I'm not gonna... I don't know, we'll see. I might become Lutheran. Please become Lutheran. I'm really considering it. We'll see. We will see. But anyway, we have any questions now? 18? Yeah. Wow, we have like 6 or 7 people here. What are my thoughts on Alex O'Connor? I mean, he's the most open-minded atheist there is, and he's obviously going to become a Christian. It's a matter of... It's not a matter of if, but when. You got a question? Can you ask it? Luther was based because he was German, correct. But yeah, Alex O'Connor is incredibly open-minded, and he clearly wants some religious ideas to be true. The question is, okay, well, if you're not... I should just ban you from the stream. Refusing to ask a question is absurd. Yeah. But Alex will become Christian eventually. I foresee it happening. Very likely. Yeah, well, no, Calvin was not French. That's Jesuit propaganda. He was Swiss, okay? It's Jesuit propaganda that says Calvin was French. Alright? And we don't listen to Jesuit propaganda here, alright? We are intelligent people, and we know that the Jesuits are wrong and cringe. Like, you want to know how, you know, a certain religious group is wrong because they're super gay. Thoughts on Joan of Arc? I mean, I'm sure somebody who knows more than me is going to school me on this, but I really hate her. She basically continued a war and got a lot of people dead. It's kind of really horrible. And she fought for France. It's pretty gay. I don't know. Thoughts on schismatic churches? I mean, they're in sin. They're in schism. So they need to stop that. There's not much else I can really say about them. I pretty much agree with Redeem Zoomer on, you know, schism and whatnot, so there's not much of a disagreement there. I don't know. Give me one moment here. Yeah, Joan of Arc, more like Joan of Stupid. I shouldn't have been quiet for like a minute and a half. I probably lost all my viewers. Anyway, I hope I've helped you intellectually subjugate your friends. Oh, okay, here's what I thought. I'd forgot something. So, as you have to become a pseudo-priest in your relationship in order to intellectually subjugate your friends, we have to look to who is the greatest priest and how did they debate. And that's, of course, going to be Jesus Christ. And we have to know that Christ knew the ideas of his opponents better than they did. And so this is something we'll see. You know, a lot of you are probably Catholic, and your parents are probably Baptist or something, and you're trying to convince them. And there's this problem within Catholic apologetics. It's very similar to what we see in liberalism. So I'll go over what the problem is in liberalism first, and then we'll go over the same problem in Roman Catholic apologetics. So liberals, they struggle with the idea of understanding other people. They cannot understand anyone who doesn't agree with them. They don't know how to mimic the mind of a conservative to understand what they think. Whereas a conservative is able to do this incredibly well. Most conservatives understand liberalism very well, and most liberals do not have the same for conservatives. And so as you see in the pseudo priesthood, you have to understand the ideas of those who you are arguing with and trying to convince of other things better than they do, which most of you do not. Um, and we see the same thing in Roman Catholic apologetics, where they don't understand Protestantism at all, and they suffer very deeply from it. Their apologetics are not very good at all. And now a lot of Protestant apologetics is also this way, especially non-denominational apologetics, which isn't really Protestant. They suffer from not understanding, not only not understanding Catholics, but they don't understand Protestants either. And so this is particularly a problem for Roman Catholic converts in that they seem to refuse to understand Protestantism. They maybe understand evangelicalism just because evangelicalism is obsessed with simplicity. Really, all it is obsessively boiling everything down to a bunch of random statements. And it's, yeah. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. I believe I am an anti-disestablishmentarian. It's pretty based, actually. Although that word only came about like 100 years ago to describe a very old idea, so I don't really like it that much. Thoughts on Bloody Mary? I mean, she was pretty evil. Hello, Reformed Catholic. Reformed Duchy, Mrs. Gia Maria. Yeah, I think he's still around. He's just not in the live chat today. Somewhat complex situation in Australia. The Presby church you attend is older than the main line, so some would say it's not. We are schismatic, but we never joined the main line. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing too, where churches like there are a lot of churches that aren't technically schismatic, but they aren't mainline either. So you're probably fine, but I don't know. Yeah, you're probably fine where you are. Just, you're not necessarily helping the Reconquista, but you're not hurting it either, and you're not in sin. So, Charlemagne is based. Correct. Charlemagne was incredibly based. Very based. There's this great story about Charlemagne, actually. So they were crossing the mountains, and they had a bunch of captive, we'll call them Turks. It's a certain religious group in the Middle East that we probably all know about. And as they were going through the mountains, they came to this impasse where they did not have enough food to bring everybody through. And they didn't just want to murder everybody. And so what they did is they said, hey, you can either convert, or we're just going to have to kill you. And so about a third of them actually did convert. They got baptized, and almost all of them stayed Christian the rest of their life. They became productive members of society. They were Christians, and they believed the gospel. It was, yeah. So, yes, forced baptisms do in fact work. In fact, that's part of King Alfred's legacy, is forcibly baptizing people. The Italian time zone. Yeah, Gia Maria is everywhere. It's crazy. No, Cleopatra is not black. In the English too. No. Charlemagne is not the rightful heir to the title of the Roman Emperor. Well, go be cringe if you want. It's not acceptable. Oh no. Oh no, a random YouTube commenter is not the live stream. Calvin was not French. That's Jesuit propaganda. It is Jesuit propaganda, okay? The Jesuits said Calvin was French. They're lying, okay? We gotta get our facts straight. Yeah, the Holy Roman Empire was Holy Roman and an empire, correct. Well, Calvin fled from France, but he was born in Switzerland, okay? And then he moved to France because he made a cringe bad choice in his youth. That's just total depravity for you. And then he fled France because he was so smart. Western propaganda, the East is based? No, that is a lie. Albania's the true Rome? No. Well, if you think the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, you're just wrong. Um, I mean, we might as well say that the Visigoth kingdoms that took over the Western Roman Empire were not Roman. And all the people were Roman. Everyone was Roman. It was still a Roman system. It was still part of an empire. It just wasn't the same as the Roman Empire. Now, I wouldn't quite call the Visigoth kingdoms holy, but I would call the Holy Roman Empire holy. I would call it an empire, although it was certainly more of a loose federation than an empire. I will maybe grant that. And it certainly was Roman. It was just as Roman as the Visigoth kingdoms were. There's no reason to say it wasn't. Yeah, locally you would be considered the institutional church over the main line, who congregated and also sold off their church, started worshiping in a golf course full of poker machines. Wow. Third, Rome was a Russian empire. Nah. Yeah, Wikipedia is just going off of Jesuit propaganda, guys. It's just Jesuit propaganda. Yeah, it's true. Calvin was actually born. He wasn't just born in England. He was born in America, which at the time was England, obviously. No cap, for real. The Ottomans were not Roman. Australians are the true Albanians. Australians are not real people at all. Anglo-Irish Anglican asks, "Will I shout out your friend?" Um, oh my goodness, you dirty! That I will not shout out. Dixon sounds like a cool person. I'm sure. Yeah, John is not. It's because it's a Swiss name. Okay, John Calvin was definitely Swiss. He wasn't French. He wasn't French. Madagascar is a true Rome. Yemens are the true Australians. You know, I almost fell for that Anglo-Irish Anglican. Well, you should go back to watching a movie. This stream we've devolved into the point of worthlessness. About the first 20 minutes were really interesting. Will I shout out your friend Nick Fuentes? Yeah, shout out to Nick Fuentes. He's a real one. We love that guy. Sounds like a great friend. Alright, do any of you have questions about intellectually subjugating your friends? I do. Well, I have more thoughts on the topic. I wish I had organized them beforehand because I missed the part about pseudo priesthood and the further explanation of that. Thoughts on Nestorian femboys? Um, I mean, my thoughts on I think being a Nestorian femboy is the surest way to go to hell. You have a zit near your forehead that looks like I just came back from a Diwali festival. That's crazy. What do I think about annihilationism versus eternal conscious torment? I understand why people believe in annihilationism, but it's just clearly not true. Because if you were in hell and paying for your sins, you would be sinning against God actively in hell because nobody's in hell that doesn't hate God. This is simply the case. If you don't love God, you hate God. If you're not with me, as Christ says, you're not with me, you're my enemy. So they hate God, and they're continually sinning against God by hating Him. So they have infinite amounts of sins that they have to pay for. So even if annihilationism is theoretically possible, nobody's in hell that's not going to, be there forever because they're continuing to sin. I am not French. What about Mia Physite femboys? No comment. Oh, you're Australian, so your IQ is too sunburned to have an intellectual question? Real. Thoughts on Methodist tomboys? Oh, modalist tomboys! Okay, you know what? Tomboys in general are usually just like what girls who wear pants, basically. That's just all of them nowadays. But modalism is bad, so not a big fan. How do you intellectually subjugate your leftist or pagan friends? So you have to understand a few principles. Number one, intellectual ideas never go up. So you're never going to have, a bunch of people in, let's say, a church go and they're going to influence the pastor, and then the pastor's going to influence the bishop, and the bishop's going to influence a theologian who's going to influence the Bible. It doesn't go like that. It doesn't work backwards. Ideas do not work backwards. So that's one thing. So you have to understand that you are in a hierarchical relationship, and you have to be at the top of the hierarchy. All right, and you have to position yourself as the pseudo priesthood, and they are the normie. They are the normie in the congregation of the church who's getting your ideas. And as a pseudo priest, you have to look to the example of Christ, and Christ understood what his opponents believed better than they did. So you have to understand their ideology better than they do. So that's one thing. And you have to be able to combat their objections. And you also have to know debating doesn't convince anyone of anything. I've never debated with someone. Well, actually, no. I've had almost no debates where people have admitted at the end that they were wrong. And it's just simply not the case. So conversations are the way to go, and live a better life than them. Legitimately, being a better person than other people is honestly the best way to convince them of something. Aryan tomboys? No, Aryan tomboys are not cool. Well, it depends on what type of Aryan you're talking about. Because if you're talking about, like, Aryan the race, and yeah, I guess that is cool. If you're talking about Aryan the type of heresy, that's not too cool. You didn't join right at the end this time? Yeah, we're going to go for probably another 5 to 10 minutes. We're just doing questions now. I think I got my main ideas out in the first 20 minutes or so. Bro, that's heresy? Real. Thoughts on Norse mythology? It's kind of overrated, although it did inspire the Lord of the Rings. So, yeah. You think Aryans weren't that crazy? You can definitely see their interpretation of the Bibles. Or of the Bible. So the church fathers would have thought you were crazy. They did not consider them to be honest interpreters of the scriptures. They didn't think they handled them correctly or honestly in any way. Jesuits are jelking? I don't know what jelking is, so we're going to go with Jesuits. Because I know people clip this out of context. Favorite X-Men character besides Cyclops? I've never liked Cyclops. It's probably the teleporty guy. Nerd alert, real. Yeah, well, we're all nerds here. You can't be watching the Wilhelmius Van Diaper channel and be a big theology fan and then make some fun of somebody for liking X-Men. It's ridiculous. Aryans are Indian. It's ridiculous. That's no. Thoughts on only using the Psalter in worship? I think it's fine. Here's what I would say. I could attend a church that only sings the Psalms. I could not attend a church that anathematizes somebody who doesn't only sing the Psalms. And so that's what I would say. It's perfectly fine to only sing the Psalms. It's not fine to anathematize anything else. Yes, Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler. Don't look up jelking? Okay, I won't. I don't want to know what jelking is? Okay. You're too base to be nerdy? Well, go ahead. I should definitely Google what jelking is on stream. Should I turn on my camera, show my screen while I do it? Have I ever considered becoming Catholic? Yeah, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago now. It's really how I got into theology. I watched a debate just because I liked debates, but I was mostly into politics at the time, as like my mid-teens, and I was obsessed with politics. I really did not know anything about politics, but I just liked the news and yelling at politics. And I watched a debate, and it was on Catholicism versus Protestantism. It was the broadest topic of all time, and it was a really bad debate, which looking back on, I would have performed better than either of the debaters. Like, I could have argued the Catholic side better than the Catholic, and the Protestant side infinitely better than the Protestant. But, at the time, I didn't know how to handle any of the Catholic claims, Roman Catholic claims specifically. I don't know, I had no way to actually, reject those claims. And so I did consider Catholicism. I looked into it. I thought about it a lot. And ultimately, I rejected it. I started looking into the, how biblical their ideas were, which you should do. You actually should do and look into how biblical the ideas of a certain group is. But you shouldn't just, blanketly go, oh, well, this person says that it's not biblical, so I guess I believe them. You should be intelligent. And because most, the Bible's only one text, history is 1,000 texts. Well, I suppose the Bible is many texts, but Bible literally means library. But there is no Bible of history, or for church history. Which makes it substantially harder to evaluate claims about church history. Do we need more reformed brain rot channels? Yeah, and we need more confessionally reformed Protestants, or confessionally reformed Protestant apologists, and just apologetic channels in general. Because there's tons and tons of non-denominational evangelicals who aren't really apologists, but they'll spend their time dunking on Catholicism and be like, "That's not biblical. Stop worshiping Mary." And they get dunked on all the time because they have no idea what they're talking about, and they just repeat random ideas. We need less of those and more people, like the other Paul and John Luke, and even kind of even cleave to antiquity before he converted, which his stuff was kind of bad looking back. It was kind of low level, but yeah, it was good. Let's see here. Got a larger comment. You're going to borrow the God Delusion from Richard Dawkins by Richard Dawkins from your local library, only so you can see the atheist contradictory view on morality, and also the atheist won't be able to borrow it. Yeah, that's pretty base, and they won't be able to borrow the book. That's awesome. Yeah, this is true. The atheist morality is not strong at all. They don't really have a good grasp of ethics. Um, Best evidence for Protestantism. So the best evidence for Protestantism is that the prophets spoke the word of God, all right? And the prophets, through the word of God, were able to reform the temple. And the word of God is alive and living today and good for all correction and training in righteousness, as we know from 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. And so the prophets still to this day through the scriptures, which is the word of God that they spoke, are able to correct the church. And so that would be the best evidence for Protestantism, I would say. It's tough where you live. Everywhere it's a boomer papist, boomer manliner, boomer atheist. There's no young people to go to church. Too difficult for organizing. As Redeemed Zoomer says, if you go to a church and if there's young people there, if everyone there isn't three old people over the age of 115, don't go. He's kind of wrong on that, but yeah, you just need to start going, and young people will go eventually. Sometimes you just have to be the one to make the move, and people will follow. Is it okay for ministers to smoke on the pulpit? Huh. I don't think so. I think we should generally try to be high class in the pulpit. Um, yeah, there are exclusive psalmists who anathematize people who don't believe in it. That is true. There are some actually who do anathematize anyone who doesn't believe in exclusive psalmody, but for the most part, they're fine. You're an apologetics channel? I mean, I figured by your title. I'll have to check out more of it. I think I've seen some of your content, apologetics talk shorts, but I'm trying to remember exactly. Please, somebody ban that Petra guy. What's going on with him? Uh, who's my favorite church father? It's got to be Augustine, although I really, really like Athanasius. How do I feel about estimates? Oh, you mean like Zillow estimates? I mean, they're pretty inaccurate. Petra's saying pretty adult things. Okay. Well, if he comments again, yeah, I'll ban him. Uh, John Calvin versus John Calvin boxing match when? Soon. We're hosting it on this channel. Will this stay up for the Europeans? No, not for the Europeans, but it will for the Americans. It will for the Americans. I'm going to region lock this video. Thanks for banning the guy. Yeah, no problem. After the stream, can I join the Discord and scream at us in French? No, I do know French, but I refuse to speak it. I refuse. Jonathan Calvin is a top 3 super popes. Real. Go to church until you are that old person. True. 6'7". Do I think you can rate a comic while only reading like below 300 comics? I don't know what that comment is. Well, smoking can be a high class, but it's got to be a cigar or a pipe. Which, in general, I would still say don't do it from the pulpit. Like you're in an indoor space, and it's generally not socially acceptable to smoke indoors, and we shouldn't do socially unacceptable things unless, of course, they're true and good. But you don't have to smoke in the pulpit, so you just shouldn't. Whereas, like, you have to say socially unacceptable things like, "Hey, you can't be gay." That's socially unacceptable, but you have to say it anyway. Or it's more socially acceptable now. You gotta say it anyway. Yeah, smoking a pipe is the classiest of class at every class. That is true. Do I think that Albert Camus was right? I need to look up who that actually is. Maybe I'm showing my ignorance here. Best confession. I mean, the Westminster Confession right now is my favorite. The Augsburg is pretty good. I've been reading through that, though. I like it a lot. I agree with most of it. Bro, why do I say 6'7"? That's cringe. How is it old already? I don't know how you can tell when these memes get old. I'm still stuck on the low taper fade meme. If RZ and Jonathan Calvin are super popes, who is the ultra pope? Well, it's me. Yeah. Cigars are cool. Thoughts on swearing? I mean, I don't do it. Most of it, I mean, well, not most of it. We need to get more comfortable with scenarios where swearing is okay. Like, there actually are times when you need to swear and when swearing is good and acceptable. And if people get too strict on language, you have to basically condemn Christ because Christ at times has sworn, or not necessarily like proper swearing, but still, he said stuff that the principles about swear words would condemn if you take them too far. Is smoking meth at the pulpit okay if it's after service? Only if it's a Methodist church. Are you late? Yeah, this is about the end of the stream. We're just answering questions. We're not going to go for more than 10 minutes, so probably like 5 minutes left. Might as well. Mimas lived way too long. I think 6'7" is only like 2-3 weeks old? Or is it 6 or 7 weeks old yet? I don't know. Post-nihilist philosopher. I don't really care about post-nihilist philosopher. I mean, I'll look him up. If Wilhelmius van Diper is the ultra pope, who is the mega pope? The mega pope is Johann Adolf Schnitzelmacher. Oh no, Reformed Duchy is the mega pope. Kid Fury plays YT3017 says, "Can you give Mama a kiss?" No. Hello, Nasser. Welcome to the stream. You have come at just the end. It's unfortunate. Okay, can the Pope smoke meth and make it infallible? I don't see why, from a Roman Catholic perspective, he couldn't. Okay, if I could add 3 amendments to the Constitution, what would they be? Number 1, I would make an amendment that makes it easier to make any amendment that I want. Number 2, I would appeal all of the amendments. And then number 3, I'd make an amendment that makes me king. And I don't even mean this as a joke. I mean it legitimately. If you wanted to change the problem with the Constitution is that it's not self-enforcing. Now, the Constitution has a little bit of brilliance in that the Second Amendment gives the right to guns, which in some ways does actually self-enforce, and that the people can enforce the Constitution. But it doesn't really work anymore. Like, we don't live in, 1689, where the people could literally violently overthrow their government and then just have a working government the next day. We can't really do that anymore, and we don't have people of the caliber that they could actually take over a government. It wouldn't work. But the problem with the Constitution and its ever changingness is I can just make an amendment that makes it easier to change, and then get rid of it. There is no reason I cannot vote to just make myself a monarch. That's the problem with democracy, is there's no reason for it to stay on democracy. Okay, how high can I jump? Not very high. I would make an amendment that bans Nestorian femboys. Why does everyone have the username Reform Cat? I don't know. A lot of Reform people in here, though. Thoughts on Curtis Yarvin? I really like Curtis Yarvin. I was spending most of the day listening to podcasts with him. And that's kind of how I got onto the topic of intellectually subjugating your friends. I brought him up earlier on stream, actually. I really like Curtis Yarvin. Can the Pope make being an Albanian a heresy? I don't think so. But, I mean, if he infallibly declares it, I guess you have to defend it if you're Roman Catholic. Thoughts on Philip Melanchthon? He was cool, although I believe he was basically kind of Arminian, which is cringe. The Pope can bless ice. Surely he could bless that Walter White ice. That's give me a second. Oh. Would I rather be gay for a day or wake up with no legs? Now, here's the thing. I don't necessarily have to do any gay stuff. I would just be gay. But I wouldn't. I don't have to do any gay stuff. And here's the thing. You're only gay for one day, whereas if you have no legs, you don't have legs forever. So just practically speaking, I would have no legs. You agree, but sometimes he talks in circles? Well, Curtis Yarvin is like, he's kind of weird and socially awkward, but he's also smarter than like 99% of people. I don't know what we're going to do about Carl the Piggy. You were outside today? W. Victory. Oh, that was your response to your brother when he asked? Yeah. Have I ever heard of the Old Glory Club? They have state chapters in the U.S. for organizing right-wingers. I have heard of them. I don't know too much about them. But could I resist Nick Fuentes if I were gay for a day? The better question is, how does Nick Fuentes resist men even though he's gay every day? I don't know. You're a Muslim turned agnostic, but you like Christian content? You know, I'm glad. I hope you continue consuming it over time, and eventually you'll convert, I hope. Anyway, everybody, pray for that guy. Pray for Nasser, or Nasir. No, it's Nasser. Not Nasir, I don't think. Anyway, we wish the best for you. Am I the Bay Harbor subjugator? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Okay, so here's the thing. Curtis Yarvin actually does have influence in that he sits kind of up as a bishop, but he influences other people. I mean, no one can doubt that he has influence over J.D. Vance. He has influence over Peter Thiel. He has influence over, influencers like Aristocratic Utensil and what's his face, Orrin McIntyre. These guys influence other people. They've influenced me. So, yeah, Curtis Yarvin has a lot of influence. Thoughts on Indians, like from Indiana, the state? I mean, they're pretty nice. Nasser will be the next pope? Correct. Thoughts on William Lane Craig? He's kind of annoying. He's a Molinist, which is weird and annoying, and he's a Apollinarian, which is heresy. Thoughts on the Moravian Church? It's based, and it shows that Protestantism is more than 500 years old. I would send myself, yeah, if I was a homosexual, I would go to a gay conversion camp. Alright. Well, I'm gonna go to bed. Yeah, okay, the Distributist does have a good video on Curtis. I need to finish that. I watched like half of it a year ago, and then I never finished it. If you call yourself a follower of Christ instead of a Christian, you don't know the Bible, and you're stupid. You're getting out of bed? That's weird. You live in a place in the world that's made up. Alright. Yeah, I think William Lane Craig is a heretic. He is a Neo-Apollinarian. He says it himself. He denies the Nicene Creed, and he does not hold to, well, and he's a Molinist, and Molinism is cringe and gay. Thoughts on Jerome? I like him, he's cool. vindicates Protestantism. Methodist perspective video on how non-denom should be Methodist. I mean, non-denom should all be Methodist. This is true. But that's only because Methodists don't care about theology. Alright. Okay, I have so many viewers right when I'm ending the stream. Alright, everybody. Go forth, be awesome, serve your king. I am now done.